one of the Democratic candidates, Mr. Werner, has failed to appear. We can't really explain or give an explanation for his absence because earlier he had promised to be here. But consistent with the League's tax status and under federal election laws, we may not host a federal candidate's appearance that is campaign related when there is only one of the candidates here. Therefore, we are not able to have the opportunity of hearing from Mr. Ireton today.
My name is Michael Smeagol, for those of you who do not know me. I was born and raised here in Maryland. My mother was handicapped, a single mother who raised 4 children. I was the oldest of 4 children. I learned very early on the value of $1, going out to the store, carrying groceries or selling newspapers or shining shoes. And you bring home milk, bread, and eggs. You had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so when I was old enough, I joined the Marine Corps at 16 years old. Was able to get out in 1979 and went to community college where I studied psychology and history, and went to a 4-year school after that, then went to law school. During law school, I worked midnight to 8s in a mental institution. I was a man in a white coat, and I worked in a respite care center, so I've had extensive history in working, and my whole life I've worked at least 2 jobs, both in school and in the service. So when I got out now, 12 years ago, I was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates. I spent 12 years there. I was the vice chair of the Eastern Shore delegation. I was on the Judiciary Committee, and I was also the minority parliamentarian for the Maryland House of Delegates to make sure that the rules were followed, and so I'll be sure to stop when my 2 minutes comes. But as a delegate and in the Maryland House, I worked very hard to make sure that the principles that I hold from this Constitution were always upheld over party or politics. And that's what I promised to do in Congress, and it's important that when somebody tells you that they will do something, they uphold their word and they actually do it when they go there. Too many people say all the right things, they do all the wrong things, and I promise you I will do as they did in the Maryland House of Delegates and always uphold the principles of the Constitution. Thank you.
You know, as many of you know, my parents came from communist countries. You can't have this kind of forum in a communist country. I had the opportunity to visit China. Those of you who follow China policy right now know that President Xi over there is having a crackdown on his opponents. You can't do this over there, but you can do it here in America. Great country, best country in the world, glad to be here. It's been a privilege over 5 years to represent 1st Congressional District. In that time, I've cast over 3,600 votes on behalf of the people in the 1st Congressional District. And I'm sure my voting record will be discussed today. I'm sure if Mr. Ireton were on the stage, it would be discussed even more, and it may be discussed if I have the privilege of winning the primary and representing the Republican Party. And again, that kind of discussion can only happen in a country like this, so I welcome that. You know, as a physician, I know the importance, and as many of you know, I practice part-time at Memorial Hospital right down the road. I know the importance of delivering health care. I know the difficulty in keeping it affordable and making sure everyone has access, but I'll tell you, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare is not the way to get it done. If you didn't get a subsidy or you weren't on Medicaid, it was expensive, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, during the debate. As a veteran, I was in the Naval Reserve Medical Corps. I know I was recalled during Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. Unfortunately, we have to give it a number, the first Gulf War. I suspect it's the first of several actions we're going to be taking in the area. And around the world, our military posture is weak. We are perceived as weak around the world, and it is dangerous. In a dangerous world, that's not the way to do it. Finally, as a father and grandfather, and if I look a little tired, 11:56, my daughter gave birth. I was there yesterday evening. My grandson was born with $50,000 federal debt. $50,000 was his share at birth. We've got to deal with that. We've got to deal with the debt and the deficit. We've got to pay down that debt. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Sean Jackson. The reason I'm running is that pretty much I think people are getting tired of what's happening with the status quo and politicians and being lied to. You get tired of it, and that's why I'm running. I'm just like every single one of you. I'm just a hard-working person who's said that I've had enough, and now I'm going to go into the political realm and put forth a voice that I think is not being spoken for in DC. I grew up in Connecticut and Massachusetts. I left for the Marine Corps in 1988. I served 6 years in the Marine Corps, and upon leaving the Marine Corps, I joined the Maryland State Police, where I've been with them for almost 20 years. I've raised 3 kids, been married to my wife for 21 years. Went to Johns Hopkins University, where I got a management's degree. I want to be able to, get in touch with the voters and get in touch with the constituents of the district. Again, I think that the people in DC are not staying and communicating with us, so we have to start creating a bond and being able to have your voice be heard. Again, I want to champion my cause towards the working class. Right now, there's close to 40% of society is not paying taxes, and ultimately, we're taking on the burden, and we need to find a way to make that work for us rather than constantly having us dig in our pockets to pay for society and all the different programs that are not sustainable or affordable. I've taken an oath to office twice, again, for the Marine Corps and State Police, and I plan on bringing honor, integrity, accountability, and service to every single one of you. I won't let you down, and I plan on taking that with the conservative values. I'm running a grassroots campaign. I'm an outsider, and I have no political ties, special interests, or lobbyists supporting me. Thank you.
My name is Jonathan Goff, and I'm from Harford County, Maryland. I was a landscaper for 26 years for Target, Home Depot, Johns Hopkins, and I'm as mad as everybody else in this room. Congress has failed us, and that's why I'm here. Our borders are wide open. We have illegal immigrants running all over our country. We're being invaded. This is ridiculous. Every time we talk about immigration, it's like we'll just talk about it later on. And I'm sorry, but we have sanctuary cities that are funded. We have to defund those sanctuary cities. We have to get our immigration under control. My wife is from Ukraine. We met in the Ukraine. So I know all about what it's like in a third world country. She's one of our leading engineers at University of Maryland Hospital. She takes care of all the medical equipment for 15 hospitals. And if you end up in shock trauma, she'll be one of those persons that probably helps save your life. And I'll tell you right now, our veterans, they're not being taken care of. And Iran is out of control. They're not doing what they said that they were going to do. Again, Congress failed us. They let Obama spend $10 trillion of our money. This has got to stop. We got to get our government back under control again. We need people for the people. We the people. And we have to uphold our Constitution because they're throwing our Constitution right out the door. And we need a voice. And our voice has got to be votes. Again, I'm from Harford County, Jonathan Goff. And go to my website, Golf for Congress, and you'll learn a little bit more about me. Thank you.
Do you support a path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented people currently in the U.S.? If you are in favor of deportation, how would you manage the process? If you are opposed, what is your alternative to deportation?
You know, as a son of immigrants, I guess I'm probably the only one up here who is. I realize the importance of immigration to the United States. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, if you trace almost everyone in America far enough back, there was an immigrant involved. But the immigration has to be orderly and has to be legal. A nation is defined by its borders. A borders only mean something if you're willing to enforce a border. This is a great country. There are billions of people around the world who want to come to this country. It can't happen. It has to happen in an organized, legal fashion. So the answer to the question, do I support a path to citizenship? No, I don't support a path to citizenship. If you came here illegally, you can't be rewarded with citizenship. Citizenship in the United States is something to be prized and treasured. There are billions of people around the world who want to be citizens in the United States, but you can't enter illegally. So no, I don't support a pathway. That being said, do I think you have to have, do you have to have immigrants? Sure, you have to have immigrants in several categories. First of all, like my parents, refugees from areas where you literally can't go back. They have to be vetted. So when the president proposed expanding, for instance, refugees from Syria, I supported and co-sponsored the bill that said, no, you actually have to make sure that the Department of Homeland Security and FBI signs off on those, that they can vet that the people who come in aren't dangerous. So you have a vetting process, but America's never closed its doors to refugees, and it shouldn't. The other thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that we have a temporary workforce for doing jobs that Americans just simply won't do. And here on the shore, it's incredibly important, whether it's the seafood industry, poultry processing industry, or the tourism industry. So we need an H-2B program, but we need our temporary visas to be enforced. You come here temporarily, you work, and then you return back home. If you want to come and stay, there's a process. Get in line, apply, and go through the process.
In regards to the pathway for citizens for illegals, again, I'm against it. If you're here in the United States, you need to be here through the proper legal means. If you come here illegally, again, it'd be nearly impossible to try to gather up 15 million illegal aliens and deport them back to Mexico. But I do believe again, there's a lot of arduous jobs out there, especially with the industries over here on the Eastern Shore, where we do need to offer up the jobs initially to the unemployed individuals and unemployed Americans first. If they turn down the jobs, then we need to remove them from the welfare program or from unemployment, being recipients of unemployment. Clearly, the job is not necessary for them, enough for them to want to work. So in that case, that's when you offer up as a secondary category the H-2B visas to the seasonal workers. But again, it does have to be enforced. If they're here past that stage, again, if they're in contact with law enforcement at any point, we need to start the process through with immigrations to have them removed.
Thank you.
Well, I'm against the pathway, and there is a right way and a wrong way to handle immigration. And we all know, everybody in this room, we all know that when they come over here to work, they don't return home. We end up footing the bill. Comes out of your paycheck, our taxes. And the other thing is, in the past 6 years, the real numbers, 510,000 American H-1B visas have been handed out to foreigners. Now, H-1B visas are master's degree, bachelor's degree jobs. They are giving our jobs away. On one hand of the government's mouth, they're sitting there saying we need jobs, but on the other side of their mouth, they're handing out that many jobs. This has got to stop. We got all these Americans out of work. Now, H-2B visas, we need farm workers to do the jobs, and yes, they can come here, work, and then go back. But ICE, and we all know, ICE is not doing their job. Our government is failing us, and they have been failing us. They're not doing the job on the borders. Obama's telling them, don't arrest them. And now the latest that I'm getting out of Mexico, people from Mexico, this is just last week, that they come over to the United States, they turn themselves in, and then they're given a court date, and they don't show up for the court date. And guess what? They stay here. And they're all over our country. They're not vetted. They're bringing over diseases, measles, mumps, tuberculosis. I mean, you name it, they're bringing it. So you think about that. I know a person right now, she's in the hospital fighting for her life with H1N1 virus. Fighting for her life. 4 cases have been known to be brought into Maryland in the past month. So we got to do something about our immigration. Thank you.
I do support the legal method of coming to this country. It has worked for 100 years. You go, you get a visa, you come here. You learn the culture. You learn about our history. You learn the language. Assimilation, not multiculturalism. And I think it is disingenuous of the congressman to say that he is against this immigration, or he stands against it when he voted under the Crown Omnibus Bill of 2014 to fund the president's unconstitutional amnesty for tens of millions of illegal immigrants in this country. You can't go vote to give the funding to let that take place and then say I'm against it. You either stand up and say, I'm against it, and don't vote to fund them so that they can come in illegally under the president's extra authority that is not in the Constitution. He went out and said, I'm going to grant an amnesty, and he had no constitutional authority to do that. And then the congressman joins in and says, well, I'm going to go ahead and vote for that. That's wrong. You don't get to come here and say, I'm against it, yet you voted to let in tens of millions and to fund it. And that's the problem with Congress today. We can look you in the eye, we can tell you we're against something, and then we can go down there and vote for just the opposite. You don't get to do that. And so when I go down there, I'm going to do just like I did in the Maryland House of Delegates. When the congressman and I were both in the legislature together, he voted for in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. I voted against in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. And I will continue to do, as I'm telling you here, and do exactly as I promised. And I won't vote one way and then tell you I'm for something else.
Would you support the continuation of the Affordable Care Act? If not, what would you support in its place, if anything?
No, I do not support Obamacare. Basically, every study that's out there, it tells us that it's not sustainable. It's way too costly for the United States and the taxpayers. It's destroying small businesses. So therefore, I'm completely against Obamacare. I am open to an open competitive market to allow for medical programs to be competitive, not just statewide, but again, almost like what Trump was saying, where it's open borders, where it's throughout the United States, to allow competing programs to go against each other, to allow for a cheaper source for us to have competing markets, and then therefore it'd work out a lot better for us, rather than having the government dictate to us what type of program we have to pay into, whether we have our own medical programs through our employers, but additionally through taxes, having to pay for this type of program. It's just not cost effective.
Obamacare is going to crash, and we all know it. Everybody I talk to in Washington, they all tell me the same thing, that it just can't hold its own. The pharmacy end of it, the numbers don't add up, and it's not going to sustain itself. I just can't see Obamacare working, so we need to replace Obamacare. And that's all it is to it.
With what? Yeah, with what?
Well, here's what we got to replace it with. Now, you're saying with what? But what is there now? Right now, we have seniors paying for benefits they don't need. And as far as replacing it, we have to look into it. I have asked myself so many questions. How are we going to replace it, and what are we going to replace it with? Well, that's a good question. We all have the same questions on that one. But I'm not the best at the Obamacare issue, okay? So, but the thing is, we do have to replace it. We have to work on it. This is not right for any of us. It's going to crash on us. So let's. We have to look into replacing this Obamacare, and it's not the thing for the country. And I think that we can come up with a better plan. But we have to look into it. I don't have the answers for the Obamacare replacement, but we have to start working on it. Ask anybody here. It's something that's difficult. We're going to have to look into replacing Obamacare with all these recipients already in Obamacare.
I sponsored the bill in Maryland to repeal Obamacare, and I would never have voted to fully fund it, as was in the omnibus bill, as the congressman did. So when he tells you he's against Obamacare, it never would have happened had not Republicans stood up and voted to fully fund that. That was wrong. You want to know what we should do? Well, it's very simple. You go and use the HSAs that we have, the health savings accounts, which in Maryland they limited to $6,100. You raise those. If you go to employers and you say every dollar you invest in the health programs for your employees is going to be tax deductible, how many employers do you know that wouldn't take the $10,000 that they would have been paying in tax and insure their employees? You remove the barriers between the states. Right now, you can't go to Texas and buy the best plan and bring it here to Maryland because we put up artificial barriers in Congress. So if you remove those, go to an open market system. Let the free enterprise system work and use capitalism. You'll have security, you'll have certainty, and make it portable so you can take it with you. The only question that people had is how do you take care of pre-existing illnesses? And you can do that. You can make it so that you take care of the pre-existing, you make it portable. The idea that when they tell you these numbers now, and they come out and say, well, we've got 9 million more people on the Obama insurance. but 200 million people have lost a better insurance. When you take people and you say that we put 9 million people on the insurance, what you've done is put some of them into the Medicare or Medicaid program. You've taken them off a better insurance that they had. We've ruined the best insurance, we've ruined the best medical system in the entire world. And we've made it so that financially, we will not be able to survive. And we had the best medical system in the world. We don't now. That it could have been stopped, it never had to take place, but the congressman voted for that. He said, fully funded, gave the vote under the omnibus bill, and that allowed it to take place. So you don't get to sit here now and say, I'm against Obamacare, but I voted to fund it.
I think I detect a pattern here. I think the former delegate is going to look at my 3,600 votes, pick out one out of context, one or two, and then mislead you on them. Let me tell you about the omnibus bill. The omnibus bill funded the entire government, and as a matter of fact, with regards to immigration, it didn't fully fund the president's program. The delegate, I suggest he should read the bill before he comments on it. It funded it through February, when the leadership promised that we would, as we did, pass H.R. 240 with restrictions on the DACA program, which the Senate rejected, and when it came back from the Senate, I voted against it. Just the facts. When you talk about Obamacare, the fact of the matter is the omnibus bill did one of the most important things to the Affordable Care Act that we could have done, which is a suggestion that Senator Rubio put in the bill, which is that we don't take $2.5 billion of taxpayer money and subsidize the insurance companies. It stripped out the insurance company subsidy, $2.5 billion. That's not fully funding, but again, if the delegate had read the bill, it might have been a different story. Let's talk a little about the Affordable Care Act. There are parts of the Affordable Care Act that are important. And again, on this issue, look, you don't have to believe me. The Congressional Research Service has the over 50 votes I've taken against the Affordable Care Act and various parts of it. So when the delegate says that I fully supported it, I think you know better. H.R. 2653, those of you who are interested in the alternative, look at the one that I co-sponsored, helped write, H.R. 2653, the American Health Care Reform Act, that does truly innovative things, like increase NIH funding so that we can actually cure or attempt to cure Alzheimer's, heart disease, stroke, cancer, the diabetes, the things that that really affect our health care, that we allow purchase across state lines, that we expand the health savings accounts while we retain the coverage for pre-existing conditions up to age 21 and eliminate the annual caps. Thank you very much.
What measures would you vote for to improve the quality of the Chesapeake Bay, including its tributaries and wetlands?
For one, there are programs out there that these farmers have in place right now. And what happens, one of the guys that I know that's on the Eastern Shore has a big farm, he's got the runoffs from his fields, his crops, and they're going into these small sediment ponds on both sides. And what he does is, by the time it gets all the way down, and he actually reuses the water, for his crops. Okay, so it goes, out to the outside sediment ponds, goes down, and then he uses those sediment ponds to water his crops again, and it takes care of about 70% of the rain runoff for the Chesapeake Bay. And I presented this to Larry Hogan, so I'm hoping that Larry Hogan will listen to this plan. Another issue is the Conowingo Dam. Now, a lot of our problems and sediments are coming downstream from the Conowingo Dam, and it's a mess. And in fact, the power from Conowingo Dam is actually feeding New Jersey. But yet New Jersey doesn't want to refurbish the Conowingo Dam. They want Marylanders to pay for all that, which they get the electricity. So we have to work with our northern states, which is where we're having most of our problems. Okay, that's where we're getting all the sediments and the runoffs. So we have to start mandating that the northern states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, start working to clean up their act, because all this is coming down into our Chesapeake Bay. So if you have any more questions about that, I mean, like, I was a landscaper, and I took care of all the sediment ponds for Home Depot, for Target, so,
Thank you.
First off, though, I want you all to go and get your Googles out and look at the Omnibus Bill 2014, not the Omnibus Bill 2015, which the Congressman is citing to. 2014, he did vote for, and he did vote for full funding of the medical under the Obamacare. Now, on the issue with regards to the bay, you have to stop what's happening with the sediment and the nitrogen coming over the Conowingo Dam. In 2012, I went out there and we had a press conference, and it was after a report came out from the U.S. Geological Survey that said the problem was not private property owners, farmers, or business owners, it was the Conowingo Dam and what was coming over. And what just happened? Congressman Harris supported a bill to kill oversight of the Conowingo Dam pollution coming into the bay, and in favor of Exelon, his fourth biggest contributor. He said, let's take MDE out of the picture and let the feds look at it. MDE was in there saying, no, clean this up. The 85% of the filled reservoirs behind it, which bring tons of the pollution down into the bay. Remember after Sandy, you look at the pictures, there was a 100-mile plume of a chocolate-colored sediment going down into the bay. And that was because they hadn't cleaned that up. So why favor Exelon, a big corporation, over all of us, 6 out of the 7 counties that are on the bay, who are paying billions of dollars for the cleanup, are in the 1st district? The congressman's duty should have been to make sure that that MDE had the right to say that the water coming over that bay is clean and not vote to take them out of it. And I would not do that. I stood there and said that they need to clean this up back in 2012, and I stand there now. When we had a problem here with what was going on with Unicorn Lake, we came out here and fought to fix Unicorn Lake. Thank you very much.
I guess the pattern continues. Mr. Smeagol, read the bill. And I'll read verbatim what the committee says that bill did. It says the bill doesn't change states' ability to deny, grant, or condition the application under the Clean Water Act. What the bill does is change the timeline by requiring court approval if a state is extending review past the 1-year deadline. Under the bill, if a state denies the water certification, that would be MDE, FERC could not grant the license because the applicant would be operating in violation of the Clean Water Act for failing to obtain the required permit. That bill didn't do that. It said that the states have a year. A year is a long time. A state can't take more. But let's talk about what that bill really was about, because that was only one provision. I must have been put in by some representatives up in the Northeast where water power is important. Believe me, if I had found out about it it's because then come to my committee. I'm not in the committee of jurisdiction. I would have put in the amendment. We would have even taken that language out that restricted for a year. But what the bill did is it set up our grid security in the United States. Those of you who follow grid security know EMP is a real threat to us. What it does, it says, for instance, it actually told the local power authorities that they can actually create a storehouse of transformers, because that's what's vulnerable to an EMP attack. So it actually was a grid security bill. So you know what? The state retained the rights. The state has to act within a year. If the state rejected it, it would be rejected, and then the company would have to go back and reapply. It didn't take the states out of it. Let's talk about cleaning up the bay. The most important thing is that we do it through the agriculture department, not through the EPA. Because the way it works is you get all the stakeholders in together. This is what Larry Hogan did with the PMTs, with the phosphorus management tool. That's the way that works. If we do it through the agriculture department, through the National Resource Conservation Service and their programs, we'll get everybody to buy into it, and everybody will work together to preserve the beautiful bay.
In regards to the bay, right now, I think they're being overregulated with the farming industry and the watermen, that it makes it tough for them to do their jobs. I think we need to restrict what the EPA is doing to our farmers. I think they're doing an excellent job in trying to keep nitrates and nitrogens from going into the water and destroying the industry for the watermen. But here in Maryland, first of all, we need to repeal the rain tax, flush tax, and in regards to the bay restoration tax from NBA, we need to make sure that if it's not repealed in the sense that a lot of different counties, the citizens are paying a lot of money in those type of programs, and we can never verify that the funding was actually coming to the state of Maryland in the sense of being paid, it being directed towards this program and cleaning the bay. I think the citizens shouldn't have to pay for those type of programs. What I think what we need to do at a government level, U.S. government level, is to look at it in more of a macro sense, in the sense that we need to look at Pennsylvania and how the government can regulate Pennsylvania, because we could do everything great here in Maryland and have us all pay for the program to keep the bay clean, but yet if we got a lot of runoff coming down from Pennsylvania, ultimately we're spinning our wheels and spending an awful lot of money to keep the bay clean. So we need to look at it in a more of a sense of where's that water coming from and how it's being filtered into our bay. We need to work closely with the agricultural, the Attorney General's office, the NDE. We need to identify industry or big industry that's our biggest pollutants, and we need to address them and have them assist in the cleanup. Thank you.
Geographically, District 1 includes all of 9 Eastern Shore counties, plus parts of Hartford, Baltimore, and Carroll counties. How does a representative balance the very diverse needs of such a large area?
They're not really that diverse. The needs, I've been to all the counties. I've held a town hall in every single county. Yesterday was actually the last 2. I was in the morning in Somerset, and I was in Kent 2.5 hours later. So I've been to every county, and they all have agricultural needs. They all want to have jobs. They all want to have a clean environment. So I don't see a real big difference from going from Ocean City out to Carroll County in what the people want. They want to be able to have health care available to them, and they want to be able to get a job that's over 30 hours so that they can support their families, but they can't do that currently because the employers don't want to employ anybody because of the mandates that are there from Obamacare. There are things that unite us all, and so I don't really see it being a problem of being able to represent the 1st District. The interests are very similar. We're an agricultural community. We want to be able to have employment here in Maryland, have people come here, and we have the same needs for security and happiness. And so Maryland is America in miniature, and if we can go to Congress and represent the interest of America, we can go to Congress and represent the interest of the 1st District. I don't see it as being that diverse that it can't be handled.
You know, the 1st Congressional District does span all the way from Ocean City to Taneytown up in Carroll County, halfway across the Pennsylvania border. It's a large district, but it, you know, as the former delegate says, it is uniform in that it's rural and then deep suburban. So it has a lot of things in common, but it has many things that aren't in common. For instance, there's no poultry industry over in Carroll County or in Baltimore County or Hartford County. There's no tourism industry in that part of the district. There are no watermen over in that part of the district. So there does need to be particular attention paid to the needs of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, because those needs are very particular. And on those 3 issues, I've attempted in the past 5 years, and I think my record will show my support from those groups, that I have paid attention to those needs. That, you know, it's a large district. I've put 40,000 miles a year on I never thought I'd be driving that much. I mean, I used to just sit in an operating room, do anesthesia. That was my life. Now it seems I live in a car driving. But it's a great district, very diverse, very many needs, and, you know, the congressman has to pay attention to it. There are a lot of balls up in the air at any given point in time. Again, 3,600 votes in 5 years. It's a lot of things you got to pay attention to, but look, that's what you hire your congressman to do. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Yes, with the district being 12 counties, it is a very large district, 4.5 hours to traverse from Carroll County down to Somerset. I make that trip quite frequently in the last few months, and again, it is a lot of miles. But the one thing I did find talking with the different citizens and the voters from Taneytown all the way down to Pocomoke City was there was one thing that they all complained about. They did not have access to their representative. Oftentimes they would call the incumbents, different locations, his offices, and they would get someone that would give them a very vague answer, or didn't respond to their answers, and or they would get responses via the internet, just an email reply that again didn't address their initial concerns or their questions that they had for the representative. That's where I'd like to change it. I would want each and every one of you to have direct access to me. I know that's tough. You know what? I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're supposed to be running for office, so that you will have direct access to us and not one of our employees that are going to give you just a generic answer and hopefully you'll stop calling. Again, all of them are the same in a sense. They want to raise their family, they want reduced taxes. They just want to be able to be safe and raise their families in this beautiful district that we have.
Well, what do we all have in common? Gasoline. Our gas prices are so important to all of us in every district, in every county. And what I'm afraid of is these gas prices soaring out of control. Saudi Arabia is just playing with us, supply and demand. You know, we go to the gas pump, each and every one of us go to those gas pumps. And that means a lot to me. I mean, that to me, gas prices are controlling our currency's value. We have fishermen that rely on those gas prices. We have crabbers that rely on those gas prices. And every industry in America relies on gas prices. Now, the latest I'm hearing is Saudi Arabia is coming over into the United States and buying up our farmers' lands. I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody from another country or another country should own farms in the United States. And it should not, it should be stopped. Now, here we are, we're protecting Saudi Arabia with our hard-earned tax dollar money. Now, they should pay us back. You know, they need to pay America back. Our debt is going on $19.5 trillion, and Congress keeps spending and giving Obama everything he wants. This has got to stop. So, think about that.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, what legislation have you sponsored that has brought jobs to the Eastern Shore?
Wow, you know, I sit on the Appropriations Committee, which is a little different committee because I have to go through the civics of it. There are two kinds of committees in Congress, what's called an authorizing committee, which deals with legislation, and then what's called the Appropriations Committee, which deals with the spending. So actually, when you sit on the Appropriations Committee, the important, you don't co-sponsor legislation. What you do is you write amendments to the appropriations bill. So what you do is you take the appropriations bills and you try to help your districts by changing how the government is spending money in a given year. So for instance, we suggested language when the phosphorus management tool was going to come down the line, which actually, the way it was originally proposed, would have devastated the farmers on the lower shore. Basically, you would have had to have planted crops and not be allowed to put any fertilizer down. Phosphorus, those of you who aren't familiar with phosphorus, it stays in the entire soil column, but of course plants only have access to it in the top part of the soil column. So if you couldn't put any phosphorus down, even though the phosphorus in the soil was deep, your crop wouldn't grow. So what I did is I proposed, for instance, language to the Agriculture Appropriations Bill, or it might have been the Environmental Bill, the EPA, that basically wouldn't allow the government to fund a program that didn't allow a farmer to put at least some fertilizer, an amount of fertilizer equal to the amount that a crop was shown to take up. That kind of makes sense. You're not adding phosphorus to the soil, you're just putting down what a crop would take up. It's those kind of things. For instance, on poultry, it's very important to our economy on the Eastern Shore, and there was a regulation called GIPSA, G-I-P-S-A, that would have affected our poultry growers and our ability of the poultry industry to remain viable on the shore. So I put an amendment into an appropriations bill, again the Agriculture Appropriations Bill, that restricted that. So that's the kind of thing that when you sit on the Appropriations Committee, do. It's amendments to bills that restrict how the government is spending money in ways that would harm your district.
Well, I know for us, for the way I think in regards to bringing jobs here to Maryland, one of the things that I'm looking at is basically having a fair flat tax for business. Right now, the small businesses, which really take up our 12 counties, are being devastated again with Obamacare and different taxation bills that or their taxation rates. With corporate tax close to 39%, a lot of small businesses are unable to maintain and stay active. Therefore, they end up falling down and the reduction of jobs because they can't keep amount of employees that they would like to have. So if we could have a fair business tax of around 16%, That would make it more affordable and therefore bring in more jobs and retain jobs in the county or in the district.
Thank you. Mr. Goff?
The tariffs that these other countries are putting on America are ridiculous. They're tariffing American products, and we're not tariffing their products. And it just isn't fair. You know, and China is bringing all their products into the United States at no cost, but yet we can't take and we bring products into China and they tariff us to no end. And then the EPA, our companies inside the United States are having problems paying all the fees from the EPA. So we really need to take a look at the EPA. I was a landscaper for 26 years. I get it. I get the environment. Believe me, I plant more trees and flowers than you can ever imagine. So, you know, we really have to take a look at you know, how to clean up our environment, plus not go overboard. Okay, we have to be business friendly. You know, especially the small businesses, because they're getting hammered. And I think that we could do a better job with the taxes that they're paying. Flat tax is a good idea. Thank you.
I also have votes that you can check. I got over 20,000 votes over the 12 years I was in the legislature. So go take a look at them. Some of the votes that I put in to propose to bring jobs here and also help with the environment is, you heard recently they talked about a monorail. Well, I proposed that back in 2007, and it would have run right down the middle of the I-50 corridor, so that you wouldn't have to buy land, and you would be able to put people in on the western shore over in Anne Arundel County. They would get on there, it would drag them over and drop them off in Kent Island, then in Salisbury, then Ocean City. You'd be able to move the people that way and eventually move it down to Baltimore and down to DC. Get the trucks off the road, you get the jobs for building that. The Oystermen's Association, when they came to me and said we were having a problem, I said, start your own group, start your own Oystermen's Association to help protect the jobs of the oystermen here on the Eastern Shore and who are working. And so I started that association. Now, it's a little, again, surprising. The congressman did more to get rid of jobs here than he did to help. The bill that he sponsored was H.R. 3918, and that was to let 264,000 HB2 workers in here. Last year it was 66,000. Those aren't jobs that we don't want to take on the Eastern Shore. They include truck driving and such. So who here wouldn't want to get a job as a truck driver at $60,000 or $80,000 a year? You can't get it if you got people coming in on these H-2B visas, 264,000 as opposed to 60,000 previously. So you need to make sure that when you're down there, you read the bill and you do what you need to do to bring the jobs here and not to drive the jobs out.